Welcome back to ECTV. We're going to talk wheel settings for the Fanatec Csl Elite on PC on Assetto Corsa Competizione, because let's not kid ourselves, the stock ones that you see on the website, that ain't it, chief. Let's get into it. So let's get straight into it. Head into Assetto Corsa Competizione. This is specifically for the PC, and as I mentioned, using a Fanatec Csl Elite wheelbase. I'm also using the McLaren GT3 rim. This will also carry across though if you are going to use the standard Fanatec round CSL round rim that it comes with as well. If you don't order the base on its own, you order it with the wheel rim. And I'll also show you through shortly the options that are built into the wheel themselves as well, because it does matter and it does make a real big difference, making sure that you've got them aligned and doing the right things for you in terms of what you want to feel. So gain, I've got it 80%. Now you can run this up to 100%, but as I mentioned, I'll run through what's on the wheel rim itself as well, because it does make a difference, and this will stop you getting any clipping. Well, it should stop you getting any clipping in the wheel, and that's whereby you can feel like almost like a knock or a kick in the wheelbase. That means it's almost trying to output too much force for its own capacity, if that makes sense. So I have this running around 80%. I have had it running at 100% before, but just playing around with it. The main thing for Assetto Corsa Competizione, I think, is really important, and I think gets missed by some other guides that I've seen, is the fact that the cars have power steering. So the steering probably isn't going to be too heavy. I'm talking like I'm a racing driver. I did a lot of go-karting when I was younger. I haven't been in a GT3 car, no, but the cars do have power steering, so you kind of have to have that in the back of your mind as well. So gain is at 80%, minimum force at 0. Reason why you might input minimum force is if you've got a particular, like a dead zone on your wheel, but Fanatec Csl Elite is a good level of belt-driven wheel, so you don't need to kind of counteract or build in any kind of buffer for that. So minimum force is on 0. Dynamic damping is at 100%. I just left that where it was. Road effects, perhaps a bit of a controversial one here, but this is basically artificially pumping road effects into the wheel. Now, way back when I first started, I had this on 0. I've now had it as high as about 10% before, but what you have to weigh up in your own mind is, if it's artificially putting extra information through in terms of like the feel of the road, so like the tarmac, and if you run off on the, as I probably do, the gravel and the grass and stuff like that, if it's artificially putting that in, is that kind of layering itself over what is the real force feedback that you need to use to control the car? So it is important to bear that in mind. 10% was maybe a little bit too much for me. I now run it at 8%. A lot of people run it at 0. Do it to your own taste. I think between 5 and 8% is probably a good middle ground, so that you feel like you've got some information coming through, or a little bit extra information than perhaps it generically puts out, but it's not too crazy. It's not going to almost talk over the actual useful information you need to feel to be able to correct the car in slides and the like. Frequency at 330 hertz, that just leave that as it is. Steering lock, Assetto Corsa on the PC will, Assetto Corsa Competizione on the PC will match your steering lock on the wheel itself to what is in game. However, the steering lock does vary from car to car, and personally I have had it between 720, well, I mean, I think some cars run as low as like 640 degrees, but anywhere between there and 1080 degrees, which is essentially the maximum you would want to run it at. But like I say, the game will smartly kind of counteract what you do in a sort of way. In addition to that as well, in the car setup, in the physical car setup for the car you're going to use, you can set the steering ratio. I leave this on 720. The car I drive mainly is the Bentley Continental. If I look in my viewpoint on the screen and I turn the wheel, it is directly 1-to-1, and that's kind of been okay for me using it across multiple cars. So that's how I have it set up. As I say, I've got a Fanatec Csl Elite using it on the PC, and I also have the McLaren GT3 rim. I'm not going to talk through in this video about the information, or I'm not going to talk through about in this video the button settings. I can do that. If it's a video you'd like to see, please drop a comment down in the description below. But I can always do one of those, but it's not something I'm going to run through today. Now let's get onto the wheel settings themselves on the physical wheel and the wheelbase. So let's talk wheel settings on the actual wheelbase itself. As you can see, I've got a McLaren GT3 wheel, but this will be also relevant for the standard CSL Elite wheel as well, as I mentioned earlier. So as you can see, I've got this on setting number 2 at the moment. This is for Assetto Corsa Competizione. I think my other settings for the normal Assetto Corsa as well as a Formula 1 2020. So sensitivity, match that to what's in game. So in my instance, it's 720. Force feedback, that is on 100. Obviously, as mentioned before, you've got the force feedback element in game as well. So, you know, obviously do it to your taste, but this is just what I recommend to have a good amount of feedback through, but also a good kind of, you know, expected power steering feel, as mentioned before. The drift mode is on number -2. Force feedback intensity is on 80 again. Just, you know, make sure we don't get any clipping or anything like that. It's just it's a good amount of feeling, and that's the main thing here. Force is on 100. Spring, which is basically kind of like the sort of self-centering feel, that's on 50. Damper, which I think has historically been called dynamic damper, or might still be called that actually, that's on 40. Brake level, that's on 100. Shock and vibration is on 70. And the MPS function is on a constant. The final bit here, I believe this is to do with if you have a load cell pedal, which I do, so take this with a pinch of salt if you do or don't have a load cell pedal, and I have that setting on 30. And those are my settings for the McLaren and the McLaren CSL wheel, also the standard CSL wheel as well, and it will work with some of the more lightened or the light feeling wheels, some of the more heavier ones like the Club Sport wheels, etc. In terms of wheel rims, you might need to crank some of those settings up a little bit more to make sure you get a good amount of feeling through the wheel rim itself. But they're my settings for the Fanatec CSL Elite on Assetto Corsa Competizione.
Like greater than post me impossible. I cut a sucker in small chunks, make more rhymes than Michael Jordan makes slams. I'm slow.